Usually when I do a podcast that I think is going to get me in trouble, I like to start with a few observations at the top. So let me just go through a few notes that I have here. First of all, I'd like to get emails about this one, podcast@comedyseller.com. I've made the analogy many times that when people have good faith disagreements, one way to look at it is as an optical illusion. You've seen this image. Is it a right-hander or a left-hander? Some people see a right-hander, some people see a left-hander. They see exactly the same image. The disagreement is absolutely good faith based on exactly the same facts. The podcast today, we're going to discuss whether or not all the people who seem to be implying that Charlie Kirk was murdered by the Israelis, are they acting in good faith or is something else going on? Is it just an optical illusion? Do they see a right-hander, we see a left-hander, or is it deeper than that? Are the people who are excusing Candace Owens, Ian Carroll, and the like, are they acting in good faith as well? All right. I want to also, let's read into the record here my favorite Christopher Hitchens quote about anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a prejudice that may sometimes be, but it usually is not, lightly worn. It has great appeal to pseudo-intellectuals because it has great gossipy power and can draw on history and mythology and concepts like blood and gold. It can seem to explain a lot. It can form a bond between upper-crust types and the plebeians, a bond of sturdy race and nation against the clever and the tricky and the hard-to-place. A dead giveaway in distinguishing the obsessive or morbid anti-Semite from the garden variety is an inability to stay off the subject. An inability to stay off the subject. By the way, I don't know if it's plebeian or plebeian. So why is the conversation about Charlie Kirk's murder intertwined like a rope with conversations about his change of heart about Israel, about Netanyahu, about the Mossad, about all sorts of things that have Jewish overtones? Why are they treated as Siamese twins in the public discourse? In my opinion, the intention of Candace Owens and others is not actually to prove that Israel was behind the Charlie Kirk murder. The intention is Pavlovian. It's to dirty the mental association that we have with anything Jewish. Scott Adams, very smart on some things, by the way, has written, when you associate any two ideas, people's emotional reaction to them will start to merge over time. In a game of word association, what percentage of Candace and Tucker's audience would now answer Jew to phrases like pedophile, groomers, cabal, globalists, great replacement, media control, financiers, dual loyalty, blackmail, porn? Who ordered the hit? JFK, 9/11, Bolsheviks, Zelensky, rodents, rat-like, persecutor of Christians, genocide. Even during COVID, vaccine deniers love to refer to the Pfizer company as Fizreal. Everything is about the Mossad. Candace Owens yesterday was talking about how the New York Post is a Mossad operation.
But they ran with the New York Post, right? Outfit of the Mossad. I feel that a normal person's instinct is to make sure their loved ones are okay in their immediate vicinity, make sure they are okay, obviously, and then to call and alert everyone who would be concerned that you're okay, right? You're not going to get on the phone with TMZ. Why are you giving it to like TMZ, which covers celebrity gossip out of Hollywood, right? The New York Post, that's not supposed to be a local paper, a local news source. Why would you hit up the New York Post?
As of September 14th, 4 days after the murder, the Jerusalem Post was already reporting that there had been more than 10,000 posts on X using the phrase, Israel killed Charlie Kirk. This to me is all very, very deep. You may think it's paranoid. Please watch. Email me at podcast@comedysellers.com. No rants, scholarly or intelligent, well thought out emails, and I will read them next week on the show. So, one more thing. There was a little technical glitch here, but the conversation during the glitch, it's early on, was kind of interesting, so I left it in. It's like 5 or 7 minutes, but if you don't want to hear it, I just encourage you to skip it and get to the heart of the matter. enjoy our conversation with Ross Barkan, the great Ross Barkan, about Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, and all of them. Hit it.
There is a reason they're doing this. Trump is controlled by Zionists.
This is Live from the Table, the official podcast of the world-famous Comedy Cellar, available wherever you get your podcast, available on YouTube, which is the best way to do it. And this is Dan Natterman here, along with Noam Dorman, owner of the Comedy Cellar.
Hello, Dan. I'm just foaming with my
And
wire.
we have Periel Ashenbrand with us.
Yeah.
I'm drinking wine, which it's
good for your pop.
I've never done, but it's already. I've had 2 sips, and
Do you know that line, Dan?
I feel it's having an effect.
Dan, do you know that
No,
line?
I don't know.
I like wine more than I used to. It's good for you, Pop.
No, I don't know.
It's from The Godfather.
Yeah, I don't know. As you do, you're obsessed with The Godfather. I prefer Goodfellas.
You can have both.
But you can have both. But your obsession with The Godfather is quite something. We have with
very,
us.
very unique. Yeah, I'm the only one.
Well,
I like The
obsessed
Godfather.
with it as you are. You're not the only one, but you're one of. I think you're in the top percentile in terms of your level of obsession. We have with us Ross Barkan. He's been with us before. He's with us today. He's just come out with a novel. It's called Glass Century, and he's the editor-in-chief of the Metropolitan Review, a contributing writer to the New York Times Magazine, and a columnist of New York Magazine. Please welcome once again to our show, Mr. Ross Barkan. Ross, how do you do?
Good. Thank you for having me back. I always love being here.
I'd like to personally extend a very warm thank you to Ross, who I've never been so happy to get an email in my life.
All right, so before we start and get into the Charlie Kirk thing and the debacle that is tearing apart every last bit of credibility on the right that Ross never thought they had, we did have a little conversation pre-show. For some reason, we got into it about the percentages of shooters in the past who have been trans and things like that. And it reminded me of something I just looked up that Mike Pesca, you know Mike Pesca?
Yes, I do know Mike very well.
Sent to me years ago. There was an article in some journal based on some Princeton archives about slavery and the various roles of men and women in slavery, blah, blah, blah. And it had the following line in the trigger warning section of the article. The reimagining of archives is urgent because the legacies of the history of racially premised slavery propel contemporary structural racism and the policing and exploitations of communities of the African diaspora around the world. The primary sources in the archives might be misgendering people, and Firestone Library of Princeton University stands in Lenape territory with an institution with historical ties to racialized slavery. So Princeton at one time was very, very nervous about discussing male and female slaves without acknowledging the fact that some of those males may have been transgender and so might some of those females. So when you discuss the history of murderers,
Right.
I want you to be open to the idea
Yeah.
that you may be misgendering some of these murderers. Some of these murderers that you think may have been male in the past, they might have been transgender women. So now, very carefully, make your point. Go ahead.
My point was the vast majority of mass shooters and assassins, as far as we can establish, have been cis, non-trans men, and young men in particular. I think that the one generalization you can make about both the mass shooter and the assassin historically and in contemporary times, that with few exceptions, they are men either in their late teens to early to mid-20s.
You surprised me before the show when you said that Oswald was 24.
Yes.
Because I always thought he was older.
Yes, he was 24. Wilkes Booth was 26. Almost every, and you look at the mass shooters of recent years, they were all teens and 20s. Thomas Crooks, who tried to kill Trump, I think was 21 years
Yeah, Brio
old.
Princep. I'll be very impressed if you get this one.
Yeah, he was 19.
Wow. He was the guy who shot Archduke Ferdinand.
Yes, he was 19.
Wow, 19.
They're young. I mean, young men are, in most cases, with the real exception was the Las Vegas shooting, which was a late 50s Paddock, which made that one so strange. To this day, we have no idea why he killed all those people. No one knows. There's no manifesto.
No one knows why Oswald killed him.
David Callum, a recent guest on the Tucker Carlson show, whose name I think we'll be bringing up in this show,
has speculated that actually that whole Vegas shooting was a bunch of character actors.
Okay.
Yeah,
Of course.
that was one of Tucker Carlson's recent
the character
yes.
actor thesis.
Yeah.
Well, even
So
Oswald
that might explain it.
But Oswald though had a lot of conspiracy theories attached to him. So one can speculate on Cuba, on the mob, on the CIA. Like there are many tangents you can go. What made the Las Vegas so strange is there weren't even tangents. There's nothing. It's a void of no real understanding.
I want. This is very interesting. It's not the subject today, but I do want to say that. Question is whether it's we should really be talking about the fact that young shooters, mass shooters, are cis men, as opposed to the fact that just young violent criminals in general of every stripe of violent crime, are young straight men, right?
Tend to be men. I mean, I can't speak to straight and gay. I can't. I don't know the sexuality. Yeah. Of all the mass shooters.
Cis men.
Identifying as male identifying young men are the vast majority of mass shooters, assassins, and even just look at like petty crime, gang violence, right? Gang violence in cities like New York and Chicago and LA. Who is in this, this realm? It's young men. It's the argument, if you want to make the criminal justice reform argument, it's the argument against indefinite life sentences that, unless you want to serve justice, obviously, but men, when they enter their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, are not a threat to society the way they are in their youth.
All right. Before we start today's,
but we can
have another show about this. It's an important discussion.
It's interesting,
especially because there is an anti-trans wave,
deeply
coming about this, and people have been correcting me on Twitter that there actually is a violent, breathing fire, violent trans movement, like a JDL of the trans. I'm sure there is, but this is obviously also fueling just general.
Well, I think.
Wait, don't even respond because I'm going to get to it.
Okay.
So before we go on, I learned two new words, two new concepts.
No, can you move to the right a little bit?
To my right?
Scooch to your right. Yeah,
I learned two new concepts this week.
You learn the words or the actual concept?
Well, I don't know how to, I'm not sure. I learned two new words and concepts, phrases this week, both because I was searching to be able to express analogies which I felt would be apt. And let's see if Ross knows what this is. Paralipsis.
Paralipsis. Well, if I know paralipsis.
Okay, paralipsis is going to come up. I would like to put a stake through the heart of paralipsis, which I think paralyptic expression is a scourge right now. Paralipsis is the most famous example is when Mark Antony in Julius Caesar said, "I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him." But actually, he was intending to do exactly the opposite. And ChatGPT saying you won't assert X while furnishing everything you need for X. So quite often in this Charlie Kirk thing, we're hearing people say, there's absolutely no reason to think that Israel, it was behind this at all. I would never say that Israel was involved in killing Charlie Kirk. And then they go on to give you all the reasons why you should probably think Israel definitely had a hand in Charlie Kirk. And then they'll say, what are you talking about? I specifically said I came to bury him, not to praise him. How can you possibly accuse me? So that's one thing, paralipsis. And the other one is a founding mutation or a founding gene. Do you know what that is?
More so, but
that sounds like an actual scientific concept being analogized
more so
in a social.
It is the concept. It is like Tay-Sachs or sickle cell. It's a mutant gene usually that runs at a very high frequency within a certain small population that they are constantly susceptible to. And
What's that called again? A founding mutation.
I've seen it both ways: a founding mutation or founding gene. And I think there is something in the conservative DNA which just is susceptible to conspiracy theories. We see it again and again and again, the most outrageous conspiracy theories. And both these concepts, I think, are helpful to understanding what we're seeing today. So in terms of the right-wing reaction to the Charlie Kirk thing. So now I know Megyn Kelly a little bit, very little bit, but I've had a good relationship with her. She's very kind to me. She's praised me.
Not buried you.
But I'm not going to be a wimp. I strongly am upset about where she's been going lately. Not about Israel. I don't care what she thinks about Israel. About embracing these conspiracy theorists on the right, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. I want to start by playing a clip yesterday from her show. This will launch us in. This is Megyn Kelly and the Fifth Column guys, my friend Michael Moynihan in particular. This is number one, Stephen. Sot one, as they say in the big shots.
That's Mike, but he has glasses.
Okay. You got the sound working and everything? So we'll just cut this part out. Don't worry.
Hit it.
No, he's trying to figure out the sound.
No. Very attractive woman, that Megyn Kelly. She looks like Natasha Henstridge. Remember Natasha Henstridge? She was a big actress back in like the 90s.
Megyn looks like that in person. Like close up.
Well, you know, Northern European. I mean,
But you know who's even better looking than Megyn Kelly?
Yeah.
Her husband, Doug.
who's Doug? Doug Kelly? Is he a Kelly or is he another name?
No, I can't remember his last name.
5 minutes later.
You went to where? Columbia?
No, I went to Stony Brook with SUNY.
Oh, SUNY guy. SUNY guy
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
good.
SUNY guy makes it. No Columbia. They didn't let me in Columbia.
really? All right.
I never got to have the Columbia guilt because they didn't admit me.
They didn't admit you. You must have done well in your SATs.
I did very badly in math. I did very well in the verbal. Got a close to perfect score. My math was horrendous, so my total SAT score was middling.
Are you bad at math?
Yes,
That's interesting.
I'm very, very bad at math. Yes,
Is it,
I don't dislike it. I'm like actually math disabled, I think.
does it disturb you? Periel is bad too, but she's bad at English also.
I try. I enjoy. I like if math is applied to sports. I'm okay with it. Like percentages, I like.
No, you're thrilling me right now because Noam has this concept that if you're like, you can't really be brilliant if you're bad at math, and you're obviously
and I'm bad at
proving
math.
that wrong.
Yeah,
Well, you know,
really, I could barely get through algebra. Like geometry. I remember taking a ninth grade
Algebra's pretty
geometry
easy.
test in ninth grade. I got the test. I'd studied. I stared at it. I literally no idea how to answer any of the questions. I just pretended I was sick and went to the nurse. I said, I can't do this. I left. The test.
I do have the feeling that it may not be
down.
true.
No, it's
Yeah.
not true. I've told you this
Completely shut
100
down.
times.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
I
awful at
need
it.
to hear it from Ross.
Yeah.
I do have the feeling that if you're not good at math,
You're an idiot.
well, because logic is a big part of math.
So what? I've explained to you 100 times that you could be a genius in something creative or artistic. and
I
not
wonder-
be
the
good at
Problem is,
math.
I'm not able to explain to you.
5 minutes later.
All right, so this is my friend Michael Moynihan on the Megyn Kelly show. It's like 3.5 minutes. Go ahead.
I've been involved in these things when it comes to a million different issues. It becomes conspiratorial when Israel's involved, and people who are have Israel's back. It can, and I think that Candace Owens is a very, very dodgy witness in this, considering she doesn't have a ton of credibility amongst.
But wait,
anyone
let me
in
say this
these days.
in Candace's defense. First of all, she's brilliant. Candace is brilliant. I realize she's controversial, but she is very smart. She's too smart to F around and say that she's got like the letter. She seems to have either the letter or recordings that she doesn't have. She just tweeted out, more is going to come out. The truth is inevitable. They're lying, but rest assured, these people were deranged enough to put their anger and demands in writing.
Why is it about the pet issue that she's been talking about? I think obsessively for every time I tune in to in these totally crazy ways. I mean, the guy Ian.
Well, I don't know if
Carroll,
this is
who
true
the
of
host-
Candace.
Well,
But
I
obviously
think it
some
is,
people.
by the way.
No. But I was just going to say, but some people obviously were wondering whether Israel had a hand in this. I mean, that's clearly why it's come up, and there's
And that's
zero
clearly
evidence
why
of that.
Netanyahu is responding. I mean, I don't think that in any other circumstance, if this had not kind of taken over like a prairie fire on the internet, and this guy Ian Carroll has been on Joe Rogan's show. He was a guest host of Candace's show this summer, was on Twitter saying the Israelis did this. And even, you have someone like Dave Smith, who has a lot of problems with me, and we disagree on almost everything. But he responded, he's like, dude, what are you talking about? Where is
No, he
this
said that
evidence?
was crazy
So,
talk.
it's crazy. And even Alex Jones was like, guys, all of this conversation about this, why are we having a conversation about Charlie Kirk's commitment to Israel immediately after he was assassinated, because there's so many ghouls out there who were trying to suggest that maybe because he was wavering on this. And as Charlie said to you, I didn't know the guy. I met him, I think, one time. He didn't say that he was wavering on it. He said he didn't.
I don't understand. Under that theory, here's what I don't get. Under that theory, like, Candace is very influential. She's got a very popular show. Tucker, same. And obviously neither one is feeling very supportive of Israel in this war. That's for sure, in Tucker's case, and for sure.
And the conversations that Candace Owens has about this stuff, I don't believe to be normal. I believe them to be completely insane. And they're really, really deep in blood libel, in really gross old conspiracy theories.
Can I ask you a question on that? Let me just add, an honest question for you. An honest question for you on that. Because I see the clips that they share of Candace online, and every once in a while, I'll go and just kind of check the clip to see if it's like real. And more than once in her case, and same thing with Tucker, by the way, and many times in his case, when I go back to the original source, I'm like, this was taken out of context. Now, I'm a busy person, and I don't have time to listen to every podcast. Whatever. If it's not a segment we're going to do on the show, I'm probably not going to go back and watch the whole thing. But I have seen Candace taken out of context many, many times, and you can, times that by 100 on Tucker. So do you listen to her show? Like, do you actually know that the little clips you've seen online are not taken out of context?
All right. So what's been going on here is Max Blumenthal, Judge Napolitano, Candace Owens, Ian Carroll, all the usual suspects have all been implying, using paralyptic presentation, that clearly Israel is behind this killing of Charlie Kirk, because there was a story, and the story may have a lot of truth to it, that Charlie Kirk had it up to here with these kind of boorish Jews who were, I'm putting it in his words, his mentality, that when he was getting a little squishy on how he felt about Israel and how Israel was conducting the war, and he began to want to express it, they kind of descended on him and put pressure on him and tried to convince him otherwise. And Kirk sent out invitations for some event in the Hamptons, which had influencers that Bill Ackman paid for. And this clearly did get under Kirk's skin, because he went on Megyn Kelly's show the next day. Maybe I'll cut it in. And he bitched and moaned about how, I've been a supporter of Israel all this time, and I say one or two things wrong, and they're all calling me anti-Semites, whatever. So this is...
You and I are both supporters of Israel and have defended Israel since the beginning of this conflict, and spoken out about the anti-Semitism that has erupted on these college campuses many, 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 many times. And something's happening, though, with this whole debate that is really bothering me, and I wonder if you're feeling it too.
I'm so glad you brought this up, and I would second that. Megyn, I think I have a bulletproof resume showing my defense of Israel, both on campus, on social media, to great, let's just say mockery and scorn at times, because I believe it, right? I believe in the scriptural land rights given to Israel. I believe in fulfillment of prophecy. And I will say this, the behavior by a lot, both privately and publicly, are pushing people like you and me away. Not like we're going to be pro-Hamas, not like we're going to, but we're like, honestly, the way you are treating me is so repulsive. I have text messages, Megyn, calling me an anti-Semite. I am learning biblical Hebrew and writing a book on the Shabbat. I honor the Shabbat, literally the Jewish Sabbath. I visit Israel and fight for it. It's
been
almost
so
as if
unfair. They were coming after you after a turning point for, among other things, that you had Dave Smith there. Dave Smith is allowed to criticize Israel. You had both sides. The Israeli side was overrepresented.
Though. No, you're not allowed to. It's even worse than that. Again, I just want to repeat for the 5th time, I love Israel. I want Israel to win. But my moral character is now being put into question, Megyn. Not my decisions. Not like, hey, are you doing this? Is it smart or is it dumb? But no, I am a bad person if I do this.
They're making the leap from this to Israel had him killed. Now, what's so disturbing to me is that Candace Owens, clearly she has never been taken out of context. And I'm going to go through a lot of it, but let's just stop there since Ross is our guest. Do you have any knowledge of all this? Have you been following it? Do you have any feeling about it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's strange that, you have two strands of conspiracy theory that can't actually align on the right. One is Israel did it. The second is the far left did it, the radical left. And that's been the Trump MAGA line. So I'm wondering for someone like Kelly, who's now MAGA aligned, she made her conversion. They all bend the knee. I mean, I find...
Not anti-Israel, by the way. She's never been, but go ahead.
Right. You know, I find that whole world quite embarrassing intellectually, to be honest, because it's all just revolves around Trump and his whims. How can it be both the radical left and Netanyahu killing Charlie Kirk? Right? Did the radical left do it? The answer is no to both.
Well, are the same people saying both, or is it different people saying?
It's the people in the same universe. Like maybe Kelly doesn't think the left has anything to do with it.
It's worth underlining here that Megyn Kelly clearly said that she thought the conspiracy theories about Kirk's death were crazy talk.
And, you know, this guy, Ian Carroll, has been on Joe Rogan's show. He was a guest host of Candace's show this summer, you know, was on Twitter saying the Israelis did this. Where is this
he said
evidence?
That was crazy talk.
I mean, that's why I don't know for sure. I'm saying in the right-wing universe, you have the left gets most blame. That's the Trump line. But then you have this other strand of Israel is behind it too, which you can hear on the left as well, to be fair.
But Ross, there's something deeper going on that really disturbs me. You're Jewish, right?
Yes, very much so.
Well, you didn't ask that question.
Yeah, very much so too.
These crazy people and their views are getting normalized within the sphere of respectable conversation. Like you know, it was Rogan, now it's Megyn Kelly. It's like they're being body snatched. And it's like my life's mission now to make everybody stare in the face what it is and how wacky and how crazy these people really are. Because this is how I see it. When you see, and I'll play it, the things that these people are saying, you have to say to yourself, well, either I think the things that they're saying, like Tucker Carlson says, we're studying alien weapon systems at the Pentagon, for, you know, and also we also have satanic beings that live underwater, and we're aware of those too. And either you believe all this stuff is possibly true, or you have irrefutable evidence of the standard of proof of these people before they report something, before they believe something. And once that standard of proof is demonstrated, which falls not even near the range of what's acceptable for a journalist, like, then that should be the end of your embrace of this person. When Candace Owens implies that she has evidence that, you know, Charlie Kirk was feared for his life, whatever it is, you should say, well, this is the person who told me that Christian babies disappear every year on Passover. This is the person who told me that Dr. Mengele was a fraud. This is the person who told me. And you say, I'm not. If you need to cite Candace Owens to make your point, maybe you need to reconsider your point. That's what any responsible person says. Listen, if all I've got is Candace Owens and Max Blumenthal, maybe I need to go, you know, hit the pavement. But that's not what's going on now. And now there is a what's the word for it? Like a gaslighting, I guess, is, I hate to use cliches, but a gaslighting of us that we're supposed to all pretend, oh, sure, Candace Owens is reliable. So let's just go through a little bit of, to make the case of what she's saying. Can you bring up this, it's the Candace tweetstorm ping file? So this is just, and you guys tell me if you think I'm being unfair to her. Just open that file. So I don't know if you can make it big. I can read it here. So she has like a tweet storm. The first tweet is, Tucker Carlson just exposed everything Charlie was going through with his Jewish donors and what his true feelings were towards Bibi Netanyahu. Watch to comprehend how sinister the lies are the Zionist crowd is trying to tell right now. Message exists. Stop lying. Next tweet. Sorry, guys. You murdered my friend. You unlocked the Inigo Montoya in me. We're not stopping until we get to the bottom of this thing. You. Now, who is you? Next tweet. All Bibi Netanyahu had to do was not lie on Charlie's name in the aftermath, and we wouldn't be here. But he was never able to meet the challenge. Next tweet. Awesome Jew was also at the Hampton Summit. Of course. I'm just sitting here looking at this list and attempting to spin them as a totally casual fling that was not about Israel. Next one. Some of these, this is a repost. Candace Owens flat out says the text messages of Tyler Robinson released by the United States government are doctored and false. In other words, she's saying the party line, which is very clear that this guy was, a guy who was turning to the left, has a relationship with a trans woman. They have the text messages between them. Candace is saying that these texts are not legitimate. They've been doctored. So the plain meaning of this, who is the you? Isn't it clear the you is the people in the 5 tweets surrounding it in this? Yeah. So she is saying somehow that Israel was involved in killing Charlie Kirk.
I'll tell you this, something is not right. Something is not right. And I am going to need you, whoever it is that's listening to this podcast right now, to wake up. What just happened to my friend Charlie Kirk is a battle of sheer evil versus the indictment against Tyler Robinson was just released. And I have a lot of questions that I think need to be answered regarding his trans boyfriend, Lance Twiggs. Well, I just spoke to a family member who told me a lot about Lance Twiggs because the media is kind of presenting him as this do-gooder. You might be interested to know that his family has a different perspective. Also, Turning Point employees are contacting me, a lot of them, okay? And I am not liking what I am hearing from them.
She doesn't believe the story.
Things that took place leading up to that Hamptons event. First and foremost, what always stood out to us about this shooting was Decoy Boy. Never in my entire life have I seen a situation when a shooting happens and then somebody completely unrelated to the shooting that just happened jumps up and down and says that they did it. And now we learn that he's been harboring images. He has kiddie porn. What does it tell you about George Zinn? What that signals to me about George Zinn is that I've read a lot about Jeffrey Epstein. I've read a lot about blackmail operations. The people they tend to go after are people who are into children. Everybody watched my episode yesterday, okay? I never said the sentence, Bill Ackman blackmailed Charlie Kirk. That never happened. But of course, he's doing the typical, the Israeli brand thing is, I'm a victim, and let me tell you why I'm a victim. So he just sets it up. And I don't know why he's putting these things in parentheses of Charlie's supposed evolving stance. Okay, we can watch clips of that in a little bit. It's not supposed. And I'll also point you in this direction. You guys remember Bibi recently was on a PR blitz, despite the fact that he was fighting this 96,000 front war because Israel didn't do nothing, okay? He was doing a ton of podcasts in America.
Yeah, that's all edited, right? Now, let's just add into that also the number 10, Max Blumenthal, who you probably might, because you're an anti-Israel guy, you might have some...
Following my September 12th
hold on.
report.
So this is, and then we'll talk about, this is 3.5 minutes of Max Blumenthal. He also wrote an article. I have some quotes from the article. And let's see what he says here. Go ahead.
Max Blumenthal is here with a report of his latest investigations on the events leading up to the murder of Charlie Kirk.
And by the way, he cites Candace Owens. You'll see what he says.
Following my September 12th report, which provided background about the pressure, the mounting pressure that Charlie Kirk was under from pro-Israel forces, from Netanyahu's cutouts in the United States, people were talking to me. And these were people who had knowledge of a tumultuous, stormy meeting held in the Hamptons during the first week of August, convened, according to multiple sources, with knowledge of this meeting, intimate knowledge of this meeting, by the billionaire ultra-Zionist financier Bill Ackman, who is close to Netanyahu and his kind of network in the United States. Charlie Kirk was summoned. Ackman, according to multiple sources, had this meeting to basically bully Charlie Kirk into submission. Charlie Kirk walked away, according to one person, feeling like there was an attempt to blackmail him. He refused any offers of funding and also refused the offer to travel to Israel, so alienated by this crowd of pro-Israel enforcers that he was moving away from the Protestant church. This is what I've been told. Candace Owens just disclosed this on her live stream.
Candace becomes his source.
Why do you think Netanyahu felt the need to go on national television and expressly deny that Israel assassinated Kirk? I mean, who does that?
Yeah. Why do millions of people, I mean, you see it all over social media, they think Israel had some involvement because of the way they've been conducting themselves around the world. So, you know, people are taking the reality and to another level where it's an unsubstantiated theory. I have no evidence that Israel had any role in Charlie Kirk's assassination.
Paralipsis.
The reason I wrote this story was because I was able to get this background about Charlie Kirk and what was happening in his life and what was coloring his final days and the kind of pressure he was under, which tells a larger story about Israeli influence in the United States.
Did you get the feeling that he was only afraid of reputational damage or, you know, losing money, or did his fears extend to his life?
Well, that's what Harrison Smith, who is a personality at InfoWars, the pro-Trump outlet, has said. Almost a month before Charlie Kirk was killed, he said Charlie Kirk fears that Israel will kill him. I can't see any hard material evidence that Israel had him killed.
Paralipsis.
But there's this fear when you go against the Israel lobby and you're that powerful. And it's a fear that I've been told Donald Trump shares. I mean, think about it. What would happen
this is
if
our
the president
ally.
just, if he suspended
That's why I'm
arms
confused.
to, if he suspended arms to a country that carries out assassinations all across the globe, that specializes in assassinations, that has an entire wing of its intelligence services that conducts assassinations, including with household goods like pagers, would you not be scared?
You go through your personal courage and your understanding of all of these profound issues and interrelated factors here. I can't thank you enough.
So they're interrelated, but not related. There's no evidence that Israel tried to kill, but they're all very interrelated. And of course, Trump was scared and Charlie was scared. And, you know, who wouldn't be, considering they have a wing of people dedicated to assassinate? Yeah, like it's because Israel assassinates terrorists, they're going to assassinate the President of the United States. So, and let me just go on with this Blumenthal because they're all attached at the hip. Some of his writing is even worse. The headline, Charlie Kirk refused Netanyahu funding offer, was, quote, frightened by pro-Israel forces before death, friend reveals. I don't have any evidence that it happened. Kirk had become the target of a sustained private campaign of intimidation and free-floating fury by wealthy and powerful allies of Netanyahu, figures he described in an interview as Jewish leaders and stakeholders. He was afraid of them, the source emphasized. The conservative youth leader was not only alienated by the hostile nature of the interactions, but, quote, frightened by the backlash. He went on to complain to Kelly, I have less ability to criticize the Israeli government than actual Israelis do, and that's really weird, how it builds on itself. The guy that Max Blumenthal cites is a guy named Harrison Smith. Now, the guy Harrison Smith is a guy who tweets things like, Jews themselves celebrate the contributions to pornography, mass immigration, transgenderism, and finance. He also does a video, I don't have it, where he reports on pasta-like biologically engineered structures that grow in the veins of people who've taken COVID vaccines. And they actually have the video, maybe I'll cut it in.
This is coming out of people who were formerly alive. People are walking around with these things growing inside their arteries and blood vessels, okay?
I mean, it looks like some sort of rubbery seafood.
These are, I call them engineered biostructures.
Right.
So something in people's bodies is programming them.
He says that Monica Lewinsky was a CIA plant, and he tweeted also, Jews are overwhelmingly responsible for communism, cultural Marxism, feminism, critical theory, pornography, hate speech legislation, gender theory, mass non-white immigration to Western countries, left-wing judicial activism, the destruction of traditional Christianity, normalization of sexual deviancy, interminable warmongering in the Middle East, goes on and on and on. And Harrison Smith says literally this. Now, Harrison Smith works for Alex Jones.
The more you attack Israel, the stronger it gets, because the cult that runs it manipulates and controls the white supremacists and all the groups that then come in, not all of them. So there's a bigger dialectic here, and there's good people in Israel too.
And it just stacked one on top of another, on top of another, on top of another. Now, am I wrong that Megyn Kelly should separate herself? Is there some reason that she can make the case that this is not prima facie, like summary judgment type? These people are not credible journalists.
Yeah, well, they're not credible. That's true. Can she do that? I don't know.
She used to.
As I'm editing this today, it occurs to me that Megyn Kelly would argue, I never endorsed Alex Jones or Harrison Smith. I'm arguing that we, in the intellectual community that fancies itself to have some integrity and to be more rigorous, cannot pretend that the likes of Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson are not smuggling in the patently ridiculous views of people like Alex Jones and Harrison Smith, that the whole of Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson cannot be separated from its parts. For instance, here, Tucker Carlson argues that Alex Jones, who denied that the Sandy Hook shooting was real and claimed that the parents were actors, that Alex Jones is actually a supernaturally inspired prophet.
Clearly, the Sandy Hook thing was incorrect. You know, Alex, I know Alex personally, so I know what he was going through. And, you know, everybody wants to talk about mental health, and they want to praise people for being honest about their mental health issues and support them on their mental health journey to wellness. Alex has gone through some real issues, and one of the reasons why he's gone through some issues is because that guy is uncovering real shit that's terrifying every fucking day.
Well, and he's also channeling some stuff. You can't call 9/11.
He did not call 9/11
in detail because you're super informed. Now, that's all we know about Alex Jones. Let's just say that's the fact set. How'd that happen?
Right, how did he do that?
No,
you think
that's
so?
That is real. The supernatural is real, and I don't know why it's so hard for the modern mind, I guess because it's a materialist mind, to accept that. But and that's not a new phenomenon. It's happened throughout history. There are people called prophets, and there are people who were prophets who weren't called prophets, but there are people who have information or parts of information, bits of information, visions of information come to them, and then they relay it. It's not from them; they received it. This is like one of the oldest phenomenon in human history. So
I think she's in the she's in her world now. I don't know what her incentives are. I don't know her at all. I don't know her personally. I mean, there's no. I mean, even the sort of people propagating this admit there's no hard evidence. So for me, if you don't have evidence, don't spread a theory. So I don't think Israel was behind it. I think it was an alienated young man who took a shot. By the way, if you talk to anyone who knows a bit about guns and shooting, which I don't, but I spoke to those who do, it wasn't that difficult a shot. You didn't need a CIA/Israeli army trained.
A Mossad assassin.
No, you did not need a Mossad assassin. It was a conventional shot that a kid growing up in Utah who knew a lot about weapons could take.
Do you find these videos interesting? Because I'm burdening the show with the videos.
I mean, they're interesting to me because it is. I'll admit it's a strain of the right, or not just the right, because Blumenthal's not quite on the right, but it's a strain that I am less familiar with versus what I see in conventional MAGA world, which is radical left. That's the party line from Trump and Bondi.
Right.
So, and Vance as well. So this is notable in that they're not taking that party line. They're going this way instead.
So let's go all in and play a few more, and then we'll be done with them. So just also in the Max Blumenthal article in the Gray Zone, he says 4 days before the assassination, frustration among pro-Israel commentators bubbled over in public during a Fox News interview in which Ben Shapiro launched a chilling attack on Kirk without naming him. So can you play the number 7? This is The part, one second, Stephen. This is the part of the interview that I think he's referring to. So you tell me if it's chill, if this sounds like a chilling attack. By the way, I think Ben Shapiro is right on here. Go ahead.
And it occurred to me, Ben Shapiro, you and I, had people who we thought were conservatives sound a lot like the Marxist Islamists who were attending this event last week, don't they?
I think it's exactly right. Unfortunately, there's a grievance culture that has become the dominant strain on the left that says that all people in the world who are poor, who have bad lives, that is the fault of the West, that is the fault of Israel, it's the fault of capitalism, it's the fault of the Jews, it's the fault of anyone except for themselves. They have no agency, and thus all the systems must be torn down from the rooftops all the way down to the ground. And you see that sort of mirrored on a weird horseshoe part of the right that is now arguing sort of the same thing, that the problems that people have are intractable, that there's a shadowy group that's manipulating all of this, that America actually was never great. America was wrong in World War II. America never landed on the moon. And these kind of two forces are now bizarrely joining hands in the middle. It's very strange.
Do you think there's enough of an effort to push back? I find that conservative groups and conservative organizations that have these weekend events and these seminars, whether they're for young people or think tanks or that sort of thing, they sort of sprinkle these events with these kooks. They sprinkle these events with these American haters who claim to be American firsters and are fake MAGA and even stab the president in the back.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely an attempt by some of these organizations to, quote unquote, maintain the big tent. But the reality is that, as many have said, the problem with a big tent is that you may end up with many, many clowns inside. And the most fundamental thing is that just because you're saying somebody votes Republican, that does not mean that they ought to be the preacher at the front of the church. They're not the person who ought to be leading the movement if they are spending all day criticizing the president of the United States as covering up a Mossad rape ring or being a tool of the Israelis for hitting an Iranian nuclear facility, a thing he has said literally his entire career that he was going to do. And so it seems to me that if we are to hold anything in sort of reverence, it ought to be the fundamental tenets of the American Republic, which I believe to reside in conservatism. And if conservative organizations are simply going to give up the ghost on that in order to maintain a sort of pseudo-coalition, that is a gigantic moral and political mistake.
Was that a chilling interview by anybody's standard? Like, what the hell is he talking about? I mean, it's psychotic. And again, I can understand that Charlie Kirk. Well, I mean, I think Charlie Kirk's attachment to Israel was threefold. One is that it's biblical. You know, he's a religious, and they believe that Israel, you know, has the favor of God in some way to be in Israel. Two, he's anti-Muslim. And three, it was expedient in conservative circles to be pro-Israel. I shouldn't say. Perhaps four, he has, on the merits, he believes Israel is right. But a lot of these people who are at the top sitting on an elephant, is John Haidt's analogy, you know, sometimes they steer the elephant, but sometimes they go where the elephant wants to go. Just like Trump. I mean, to his credit, not as much as you think he might have, but Trump doesn't talk so much about how great the vaccine is anymore. He hasn't gone and denied the vaccine, but he followed his followers. They don't like the vaccine. Trump stopped taking credit for it. Charlie Kirk saw the writing on the wall, I'm sure, that he might need to bend his position on Israel to be a little bit closer to what seems to be the position that's bubbling up on the right. Otherwise, he might become a marginal figure. Ben Shapiro, to his credit, he's like, no, I'm not bending. I'm going to make my case even stronger. But I'm going to meander around. Like, I didn't want to say anything about Charlie Kirk. I was never a big Charlie Kirk fan, although I did go to his inauguration party. I'm going to play this video now of something that Charlie Kirk said.
Israel many times, the whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still had the same
Can you pause it there, Steve?
gut instinct that I did initially.
This is an interview he did, I think, on October 10th or 11th, right after what happened in Israel. And these were the reports that we all know that Hamas was running around there for hours before Israel managed to root them out. So go ahead, play it, Stephen. Okay, go ahead.
Israel many times, the whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still had the same gut instinct
that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe, right? The whole country is surveilled. And so let me just kind of go through this. We don't talk about Israeli politics very often, and most Americans don't know this. The last 9 months, Israel was on the brink of civil war. This judicial stuff, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis taking to the streets because Bibi Netanyahu was basically redefining the Israeli constitution. There were protests planned this week against Netanyahu, where they anticipated tens of thousands of people to take to the streets. That's all gone, Patrick. Netanyahu now has an emergency government and a mandate to lead. I'm not willing to go so far that saying that Netanyahu knew or there was intelligence here, but I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand down order?
You heard his parallipsis,
Was there a stand down order?
I'm not saying.
6 hours? I don't believe it. They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate non-conspiracy question. I just want to make sure my position is clear here. But so Patrick, there are other explanations. It's possible that the Netanyahu government was double-crossed by bad agents. Okay? That's dark, but it's not as dark as what we're talking about. Okay? Another aspect is that Netanyahu might have traitors in his government, like legitimate traitors that have infiltrated. I was texting with some senior people in the IDF, and they said, Charlie, can't say too much, but let's just say the same problem you have with the left in America, we have here in Israel. So there's something to think about. Just something to think about, right? But there are some serious questions here, Patrick. And let me tell you, my pattern recognition over the last 5 years has become pretty sharp. COVID, Maui fires, Epstein. When I see a story and it doesn't click, our guts are usually right.
Do you think there's any intel community involvement in this?
I wouldn't be surprised.
They're talking about Epstein.
I am convinced, based on my own sources and my own reporting on this story, he wasn't one of ours.
So he was an American, which leads basically 3 options: MI6, Saudi, or Mossad.
Yep.
Which one would you choose?
I guess Mossad, given his connection to Ghislaine Maxwell.
So what does that mean?
Well, I mean, it's possible that that's the reason everything's getting buried, that there is some treasure trove, and it's getting buried because...
How many people here believe that? Raise your hand. Okay, I'd say about half the hands think that it's being buried because of an Israeli thing.
All right, let's take them in order. First of all, let's lead the second thing. So, I know people who know Charlie Kirk who adore him and been very upset with me. I've had some arguments with kind of important people who are defending him and know him. I don't know him. And they say it's not true. He was pro-Israel. He became more so as he learned more about the conflict post-October 7th. I have no reason to doubt that. And yet, if I'm honest, I have a trait where from time to time, somebody does something and I feel like unless they, are contrite and they, explain themselves, I feel like it defines a person in a way, it gives me a glimpse of them that I can't erase from my mind and I'll never have again. If you make lists, okay, there are the pro-Israel people. Now, Ben Shapiro, who is a pro-Israel person, in a million years, when he heard that Israel was late for 6 hours trying to get Hamas out of Israel, it never occurred to him, maybe Israel is doing it on purpose. Maybe Israel, meaning it's not just one person, maybe the IDF and all the people and the people watching the live streams and the soldiers and the people giving the orders and the opposition leaders in the cabinet, maybe they are all purposely allowing Hamas to rampage through Israel, rape people, kill children, torture, take hostages, rip babies from their parents. Maybe this is all part of the plan. Now, a reflexively pro-Israel person just doesn't come to toying with that idea very easily. Kirk is the only person I know that I can think of who fancied himself pro-Israel who would have uttered that at that time. Plenty of anti-Israel people, sure, and Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal, like this is right up their alley. But if you do a Venn diagram, he is a circle of one that overlaps with the anti-Israel people who believe that. And by the way, plenty of anti-Israel people would never imagine such a thing. So this is an insight in some way into the founder gene
It's the founder gene, the founder mutation. They can't resist these fucking conspiracy theories. It's a sickness.
This video was shortly after October 7th, 2023?
A few days after. Now, of course, this then extends to the Epstein thing. Now, the thing, I had my beef with Megyn Kelly about this because, yes, it's true. This woman, Vicky Ward, reported that she heard that this guy Acosta, who was the prosecutor or whatever, laid off Epstein because he was told Epstein was intelligence. You've heard this story. Now, Megyn makes a lot of this, as do they all. But what they don't tell you, and Megyn knows this, is that the Office of Professional Responsibility, I guess it was during the Trump administration did this investigation, they looked into it. They interviewed Acosta. Acosta, this is under oath, under penalty of perjury, can go to prison. People did go to prison for lying to such, organizations, such organs of the state. He denied it. He said there's nothing to it. I don't know if he said nobody ever told him. He just said, like, I don't know anything about it. And then they offered him, this is very important, they offered him a classified setting, like a SCIF, where he could divulge what it is that he was told in a top secret setting so that he wouldn't, be accountable or anything like that. And he said, no, I don't need it. I declined to do that. Now, this is what bothers me so much. You can believe it's true. It wouldn't be the first time there was a spy. But it's journalistic malpractice to tell your followers, your listeners, about this remark and about this strand of evidence, and to withhold from them, is that my phone? Withhold from them the knowledge that this has been looked into by the government under oath, and the person has outright distanced himself from it. There's absolutely no evidence. And as a matter of fact, Vicky Ward, the one who actually reported it at first, she has said she doesn't believe it. They're feeding their followers a bunch of, unsubstantiated crap. And it's spreading and it's spreading and spreading. Candace Owens has 7 million followers. That's about the number of Jews there are in the United States of America. Now, of course, some of them are people who follow her like I do. But of course, a lot of Jews are not pro-Jewish. But it's tremendous influence, right? It's tremendous. She has a tremendous hypodermic needle that she can use to inject anything she wants into the American bloodstream. And people who are concerned about, as Douglas Murray called it, the hygiene of our information universe ought to be distancing themselves from her, calling her out, not talking about how she's been taken out of context or Tucker's been taken out of context. Now, I know Candace has not been taken out of context because every time I see something she said on Twitter, I say, that can't possibly be true. Because I'm always a person who says that, I don't hate my enemies that much. I mean, they couldn't have really said that. Sure. So I look into them all. They're all true. Everything she's, and worse. So let's play Candace. Which one is it? So you get a sense for Candace and Tucker. And then we're basically done with the videos. There's going to be clips here by also Ian Carroll, I think. Ian Carroll is her person she has guest hosting for her. He's a Holocaust denier. He was the first person to come out and accuse on Twitter accuse Israel of being behind the Kirk murder. It was so quick that even Dave Smith said, listen, I don't think you have any evidence for that. And interestingly enough, Dave Smith's following wasn't having it.
I'm sitting here saying, look, I don't see any evidence to believe that this is an Israeli conspiracy, that Israel was involved in Charlie Kirk's assassination. And in response, overwhelmingly, I just saw people posting.
He got caught.
Well, they
had
posted
the chat.
Well, that was one assumption. But then a bunch of people were just like going like, did he even read the Max Blumenthal article? And I'm like, yeah, like, did you catch the line in it where he said there's no evidence that Israel was involved in the assassination? Like, I think that was a very relevant part.
Now, this is very important. Let me just comment on it now. It's very important because it shows how the paralipsis is so pro forma. It doesn't really matter that every single one of them will say, I'm not saying Israel assassinated Charlie Kirk, because when somebody like Dave Smith says there's no evidence that Israel assassinated Charlie Kirk, their following goes nuts because they understand that these comments are just disclaimers meant just to give camouflage. They understand that that's just the peel of the banana that to be thrown away, and the meat of the banana is what they feast on, which is Israel killed Charlie Kirk. Now, this is, of course, everything I presented so far is edited. I'm not the person to take things out of context. Out of context to me means that if someone were to see the entire clip, they would say, wait a second, that's different. That's not what you led me to believe. That's not, how could you leave out this part? If I had known that, I wouldn't have had that reaction. I don't do that. As a matter of fact, sometimes these clips get longer because I want to give the benefit of the doubt to any argument that I can think of where someone might say, how could you leave out that sentence? No, so these are not out of context. And by the way, anybody listens to this, you send me any email of something that I left out, I will put it up on Twitter and say, somebody said I left this out, it was out of context. I'm not trying to win my argument by below the belt tactics. Go ahead, Candace.
Moons ago, before they decided to establish Israel as a country, I know you've read like the short version in the classroom, and it was like, oh, the Holocaust happened, and then we realized that Israel needs a state. No, that's not how it went down. That's not how it went down at the F all, okay? Catholics and Christians were going missing on Passover, and then they would find bodies, okay, across Europe, and they were able to trace them back to Jews. Blood libel. This Frankist cult, which is masquerading behind Jews, still participates in this shit to this day, okay? Why would you want the pedophiles to flee there? Like, why would you want the pedophiles to be procreating? Unless the nation of Israel may have been established by some Frankists. And it's looking like Theodore Herzl's family was from the exact same area in Moravia and in Bohemia where the Frankist cult was founded. Maybe he was not actually a Torah-worshipping Jew. Like, I don't know. I'm just throwing out some ideas here. And by throwing out some ideas, I mean I've read a ton of books and I've figured it out, okay?
Jeffrey Epstein was the world's most prolific and evil sex trafficker that we know of so far. He very clearly was a Jewish organization of Jewish people. And so that's a dark stain on Israel and on the Jewish people if you own it. And so the Mossad has this weird other angle where they have this like cultural, racial, religious angle with which to approach people. And again, remember, they don't necessarily have to approach someone and be like, hey, we want you to be a spy, or hey, we want you to subvert your country on behalf of Israel. They might just approach someone and be like, hey, you love Israel, right? We have this project and we could really use your support helping Israel. It's easy for it to sound like you're saying all Jews are in on some global conspiracy, which is not what I'm saying.
Paralipsis.
Who's really in power now?
This got.
I mean,
this is Tate.
Everyone always asks me, "Oh, what about the Jewish question? Don't Jewish people control the world?" And this is maybe what you're digging at, and Andrew may not have alluded to. But you don't have to be a massive conspiracy theorist to know that all the founders of the Federal Reserve Bank and the current system of financial control in the United States government, all their founding members were Jews.
Something happened for sure. Right. But I know that the narratives around the Holocaust that I was taught in school, they were forged in the era of controlled information.
I try not to like go overbearing on like everybody has to be Jewish.
It's just like that will make you like not.
And it's like, and that's not the point. The point is not that like all Jewish people are in on this thing. The point is that like is that Jewish people are susceptible to being approached by this organization, and and we need to support the Jewish people that reject it. Like we need to
encourage them to be on our side. So I think these people that are Jews bad, they're a big problem. Because we need to bring Jews to our side, not push them away, not be like, you're a Jew.
We need to heal. We don't need to like create more divides, because the last thing we need is to create another Holocaust of sorts, whatever that was.
I started digging up Sigmund Freud and realized he was a pedophile. His dad was a pedophile. His grandson was a pedophile. It's a family of pedophiles, and this gets into that broader point about what Alex Jones was saying.
That Stalin was Jewish.
Which then kind of gets into the question of the media, who for a very long time tried to convince us that Stalin and Vladimir Lenin were anti-Semitic, and then I learned, wait, Stalin was married to...
Yes, they were literally a part of the Jewish cabal, that, and credit
when
to
I talk
you.
about crushing history, where if you even say that, which I'm saying it, because I've looked into it and I found a friend who understands Georgia,
Stalin,
and they're like, everybody knows that Stalin was Jewish.
One of
and
the
I'm like,
biggest
Americans
anti-Semites
don't know
ever.
this.
LBJ was Jewish.
People, I don't think, knew this, that LBJ was Jewish.
Kamala Harris is not black, but Jewish.
And the evidence is pointing to, and there's no question, it's not even evidence. Like, nobody can dispute this. Snopes can't dispute this. Kamala Harris is Jewish.
That AIPAC was behind the Kennedy assassination.
We know that there was once a president who wanted to make AIPAC register as foreign, and he ended up shot. Coincidentally, ended up shot.
So we've got this friend and ally, and we're not allowed to ask questions about JFK's shooting. Yeah. The Mossad there on the day that JFK was shot.
And so it's quite shocking to know that information, to realize that JFK got killed, and to also know that the person who allegedly shot him, Lee Oswald Harvey, said he didn't shoot him, didn't kill him, and then he was shot by a guy named Jacob Rubinstein.
Jacob Rubinstein.
Who Muammar Gaddafi alleges was also an Israeli national.
That Zelensky was an evil Bolshevik, a Jew.
People think that the greatest mass murderer was Adolf Hitler. And no, actually, if you want to talk about genocide, the fact that people in America don't know
Pause it there for a
about
second.
what the Bolsheviks
Pause
did
it
to
there.
Christians,
So
where did
just
the
so you
idea
know,
of a
this is the there's a, if people listening, there's a tweet overlaid there. Bolsheviks was the Nazi go-to that, and her tweet there is, thank you for the book recommendation. You were talking about the Bolshevik Party. I am talking about the actual administration. So basically, the people elected with real power, 447 of the Bolsheviks out of 525 were Jews. She's talking about the communists in Russia was really just that Soviet Russia was a Jewish conspiracy. So go ahead, continue.
concentration camp come from? The Bolsheviks. The reason why we're not allowed to learn about these people, we don't talk about Henry Kagoda, is because he's a Jew. I mean, locking down churches. And people tell me to go support Zelensky as he's shutting down churches. You want me to support this Bolshevik? I'm not doing it.
Ukraine, as you may have heard, is led by a man called Zelensky. Sweaty and rat-like, a comedian turned oligarch, a persecutor of Christians, a friend of BlackRock.
While we're there, play number 9 now. Let's just get like these are the people Megyn is defending. Okay, this is great. This is the best one of all. Good.
In my bed at night, and I got attacked while I was asleep with my wife and 4 dogs in the bed and mauled.
In a spiritual attack by a demon?
Yeah, by a demon. Claw marks on my sides, 4 claw marks on either side underneath my arms and on my left shoulder. And they're bleeding. No one has to believe me. I don't care.
The U.S. government has physical evidence of crashed non-human-made aircraft, as well as the bodies of the pilots who flew those aircraft. An alien species is flying hypersonic aircraft over our cities.
So they're from here, and they've been here for thousands of years, whatever they are. And it's pretty clear to me that they're spiritual entities, whatever that means. They're supernatural.
In other words, UFOs are actually real, and apparently so is extraterrestrial life. Now we know.
So these are spiritual phenomenon. There's no evidence they're from another planet. I mean, I think that's the that's the lie, that they're from Mars. Look, space, the atmosphere is really well monitored. It's a binary. They're either, you're on team good or team bad. You can assign any name to it you want, but like, what are these things?
Evil, satanic.
Are they good or bad? And I think some of them are bad. And if the U.S. government knows that, or elements, the people within the U.S. government know that, then they're serving a bad force.
In a normal country, this news would qualify as a bombshell, the story of the millennium. But in our country, it doesn't.
It's insane.
Okay, seriously, I'm sorry. I have spent a not insignificant amount of time around severely mentally ill people who suffer from delusions. And this guy should be institutionalized, like for real. Like the fact that people take him that seriously and he has millions of followers is indicative of like a very sick country that we live in. Like Tucker Carlson should be in a mental institution.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've said many times, if you go to the hospital bleeding and the nurse says to you, why are you bleeding? And you say, I was mauled by demons. They do not let you go home. They will
keep you for observation, because obviously if you think you're mauled by demons, you're probably a threat to yourself or others. This is absolutely normally interpreted as mental illness. Now, unless you think he was mauled by demons,
right.
But when you know somebody's saying such things, and you could just go through the list, like, does anybody actually think the government knows about spiritual beings under the water that have been there for thousands? This is so crazy. So I just keep coming back to it. So why would anybody take these people seriously on anything? Why? What? I mean, it's not left or right. It's just basic methods.
I think I learned a lot from those clips. I didn't know about the spiritual beings underwater. I'm excited to know about that.
It's insanity, right?
Yeah.
And they're all joined at the hip, and they go all the way to Rogan.
I would just say that there's people that believe crazy shit that aren't mentally ill. Right? I mean, I guess it depends how you define mental illness, but you know.
Well, you know what?
That's delusion. Like what Carlson is talking about is absolutely delusional.
This is the thing. There are people who believe in religion. And it's not mental illness. We just know it's not mental illness because empirically we know that people who believe this stuff are not mentally ill.
Well, they can function, you know.
Well, but they can be extremely rational. That's a different group of people than people who say, I'm bleeding because I was mauled by demons, right? That's something else. You're actually bleeding. Maybe people say his dogs did it, whatever it was. But that is much more likely to be mental illness. But then it's, you know, you could go on for a long time putting up there the stuff that Tucker Carlson has said. So, look, I didn't want to, as I said, I think earlier, I didn't want to say anything bad about Charlie Kirk because the fact is, it really doesn't matter what you think about him, what I think about him, what anybody thinks about him. He was murdered, and it's every bit the same. You should react to it every bit in the same way, whether you liked him or didn't like him, because it's morally right to react that way, and because, by the way, if you get weak on that principle, it will come for you, right? So for practical purposes as well. So, and Moyna had said something like this too. So I really didn't want to pollute any conversation about Charlie Kirk's murder by talking about how I felt about him, because inevitably people will take that and somehow feel that I'm diluting or in some way giving a nod to the people who are happy about his being killed. What they're doing is 10 times worse. If they want to make the story that, which is, as I said, there's probably some truth to it, that there was a fissure, is that the word, growing between Kirk and the, you know, Bill Ackman, Ben Shapiro types in the conservative movement, for whatever reason. And listen, when Glenn Loury began to become sort of anti-Israel, I drove up to Providence 2 times to speak with him to try to plead, you know, my case of why I thought he was wrong. It's not offensive that somebody like Bill Ackman would want to have a meeting with him and kick it around with him. Blackmail would be a different thing, but there's no evidence of that, withholding funding. We don't even know how much funding he gets from these things. It seems like he gets a lot of money anyway. Turning Point doesn't seem like it's hungry for money. But having said all that, fine, talk about that. But to mix it in this insidious way with these questions about whether or not Israel killed him, this is a fucking outrage. And I don't understand why Megyn would pretend it's not, why she would pretend not to see that's what they're doing. Today, she woke up on the other side of the bed. I heard her today. She's like, it's ridiculous what these people are doing, trying to undermine the case that this, what's his name? Tyler Robinson. Jesus. That is ridiculous. Tyler, we have the text messages. We have the testimony. It's very clear that he did this. It's very clear that it was cooking for many days. She's completely clear-eyed about the fact that Tyler Robinson did it.
Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. We are continuing to follow the latest developments in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Yesterday, the alleged killer, Tyler Robinson, was formally charged by Utah authorities, who confirmed they are seeking the death penalty for aggravated murder. The media reaction has been shocking, but not surprising, again, with reporters and pundits claiming the motive is unclear. Despite alleged shooter Tyler Robinson telling his parents there's too much evil and he, referring to Charlie, spreads too much hate.
So here, to my mind, Megyn is righteously contemptuous of the people who would question, as she puts it in the Chiron sidebar, the obvious political motivation of the man who killed Charlie Kirk. But she only excludes from that contempt, it seems, the people who question it based on a suspicion that Israel might have been involved. To be clear, she doesn't exclude them because she thinks that Israel was involved. I'd almost stake my life on that. She excludes them because she's afraid, in my opinion, of alienating a large segment of her audience and perhaps angering some friends.
That's according to the charging documents. And in text messages to his male roommate, quote, transitioning to female, which cannot be done, Robinson wrote, referring to Kirk, quote, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out.
Well, okay, but that's not compatible with the stuff that you were open to the day before that all these other people are saying.
Unless he thinks that Tyler Robinson was somehow recruited by the Mossad.
Well, that's what they're going to try to say.
First of all, I want to say that I watched a clip from very shortly taped before Kirk was killed, in which he said that, you know, he was being critical of Netanyahu didn't mean that he was changing his position vis-a-vis Israel, and that it was really being like twisted, and that.
Yeah, but I just think that I know a lot of people are circling the wagons around that. And my feeling is I'm going to stipulate he was changing his opinion on Israel. I don't care.
Well,
I mean, it's not relevant.
But as you mentioned, he was suspicious of Israel even back in 2023 when he was talking about.
But then there's a whole body of work where he's very, very supportive of Israel and makes arguments in Israel's favor. And if he changes position, he's inhabiting now the position of Ehud Barak, Ehud Olmert, Yoav Gallant, Israeli patriots. It's not like there's a shortage. I don't mean left-wing anti-Israel Israelis and Jews. I mean patriotic Israelis who supported the war, who are now feeling that they are diverging from Netanyahu's plan here. So if Charlie Kirk has moved to that camp, that's certainly possible. Like, so what, right? So what? And the conversation should not be any, more complicated than that. I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand why, as I said, another person's been body snatched. Now Megyn Kelly is pretending that these people are not modern day, old time anti-Semites like Father Coughlin and everything that we heard about from our parents,
or at least lunatics.
No, they are embracing all the old conspiracy theories, all of them, of Jewish control, Jewish orchestration of wars. And by the way, the other thing we didn't get to about Tucker Carlson is that he also is flirting with David Irving theories. He brought on Darryl Cooper, Martyr Maid, specifically to get Darryl to make the point that the Jews orchestrated World War II. This is, I should play it in case anybody doubts me. In the interview, Darryl says Churchill's a madman. He played with toys. He's arguably the worst villain of World War II. And then he says, and he was installed by Zionists, financiers to do their bidding. That's how Churchill came to power. And then he backtracked from it. So I asked him about it, and he blamed it all on Tucker. Go ahead, play it.
Darryl, but the biggest audience you ever had was you telling people that the reason the worst thing in human history happened was because the Jews put Hitler in.
Fair,
I meant Churchill.
But look, I've told you before. First, I didn't know we were going to talk about World War II. I wasn't prepared to talk about that. I definitely know we were going to talk about Churchill. And if you watched, and I know you watched it, if you watched the thing, and there were a couple instances like this, like you mentioned earlier when he was like, what about Japan? Why is Japan doing fine? And so forth, where I felt like he was trying to draw me into like deep waters that I was not comfortable with. And I think you could see it in the interview where like I start to get a little shifty in my seat and less articulate because I'm
a wry smile. Yeah.
Yeah, and that wry smile, by the way, was like, you know, it was sort of taken as like a knowing smile when, you know, really what it was a smile of like what are you trying to do to me here, you know?
Yeah.
And so by the time I got to the David Irving argument, which is where that comes from, you know, the stuff about Churchill being bailed out by financiers
Can you
in
pause it
38
there?
and 40, which did happen.
David Irving, you know who David Irving is, Ross, right? David Irving is the father of conspiracy theorists. He has acronyms on his website like ARSHOLE, which is stands for, I forget how it works out, but for Jews who pretend they were victims of the Holocaust, and he believes there were no gas chambers. I mean, he's the motherlode.
Wasn't he sued by Deborah Lipstadt?
He was sued, and the court concluded he had lied in his books, and that he was he sued her for libel, and the court found for her. And in the opinion, they went into great detail about the flaws in his scholarship. There's a book about it called "Lying About Hitler" by Sir Richard Evans, which I recommend. So go ahead, continue the thing.
You know, he had already asked me like twice, like, well, why would Churchill do this if it didn't make any sense for the British Empire? And I kind of walked around and gave like a meandering answer. And he said, well, why else? And I did it again, kind of again off the top of my head, because I wasn't planning on talking about this. He's like, well, why else? And I'm like, well, you know, people have written about this.
So what you're describing is Tucker's baiting you to blame the Jews. You realize he's setting the trap. He says, why else, why else? And you could have said, Tucker, I'm not going there. If you're implying that it was the Jews, no.
Yeah, no. Well, look, yeah, maybe. Like, there's a reason I don't do interviews very often.
We've spent the last 70 years, I mean, in Europe's case, like literally throwing people in jail for looking into the wrong corners, right? So there's and even
particularly in Austria.
Oh, that's just a little bit that was clipped at the end. So there was a little bit of that Tucker interview which didn't go noticed. We're talking about the deterioration of free speech respect around the world, and Tucker makes this remark about how, well, particularly in Austria. I'm like, Austria? I looked it up. Austria had prosecuted David Irving. And then if you go to Darryl Cooper's Substack, he recounts that the night before the interview, they were having a conversation at dinner about this stuff. And then it just carried over into the interview. So what more does one need to know about where these people are coming from? I know I know I'm preaching to the leftist here, so I know you're happy about this. But, you know, I would say this. I used to say this about the left. This is not my left-right.
Yeah, no, and I mean, conspiracy theories have sprung on all ideological spectrums. I don't think any particular party or bent has a monopoly on conspiracy theories. I really don't. I think you see a lot fomenting on the right now. You see some on the left too. I think what's interesting is when even they, watching those clips, how even they concede that they don't have the hard evidence. And again, when you look at this shooting of Kirk, the assassination, it's not, the shot that was taken was not extraordinary. There's no reason Tyler Robinson had to be trained by outside forces or been some sort of plant. He was from a gun family. He knew weapons, and you speak to people who know weapons, it was a very makeable shot. So there's literally no evidence, and that's the thing you come back to is there's no evidence he was part of a Netanyahu Israel conspiracy, and there's no evidence that there's any far left organization around him. Whatever his views were, and the general bent of it is that he's from a conservative family and he became anti-Kirk. And he was motivated by hatred of Kirk. So obviously he was shifting left, I suppose. But really, we don't know very much about him yet. And B, if you look at the history of most assassinations and killings, the justifications that the usually young men create are post hoc. They're ways to inform their own madness. And usually, if you look at whether it was Thomas Crooks or you look at a lot of these killers, there's not a clear ideological through line. I think each side, the left has wanted it at times and the right wants it now. They want easy answers. The thing about conspiracy theories is they're simple. I mean they're not simple, but they flow from logic. It's made up logic, but it makes life seem more tolerable. It makes life seem more comfortable when you can look at the world and say, I found the theorem, I found the answer, X equals Y equals Z, instead of history in the present day is quite chaotic, and there are people with deep-seated mental illness who have access to weapons. There are people who feel motivated. Either they have delusions of grandeur or just they're delusional, and they commit acts of spectacular violence. And that's the history of
I mean, is it
America
possible that this guy,
in the world,
that this guy was completely irrational? Like, I think John Wilkes Booth was completely irrational. I think, is it possible this guy was completely irrational, thought he was doing the world a service by taking out Charlie Kirk, and thought furthermore that he could get away with it?
I don't know if he thought he could get away with it. I mean, it's clear that didn't last very long. That's the thing. Would a true rational person have been caught so soon, turned in by their family? No, I mean, I don't think anyone who is of, even if you have a political justification like Wilkes Booth, no, I don't.
Well,
think
Wilkes Booth, I think, was perfectly rational. When, in that case,
right? But also, there are many other men who felt like he did, and they aren't the ones going out to commit murder, even in the 1860s. I'm saying to take the act, it's one thing to have a through line and ideology, and some assassins do. A lot of them don't. Some do. But even then, right, you can feel, I'm motivated to do something. I'm angry. I want to do something. But to actually take the step of getting the gun and killing, that I think rationality is out the window, especially when it's, in a way, it's not a crime. Maybe it's a crime of passion. Obviously, people inadvertently kill. We know that. But when you're so driven by anger and hatred that you're willing to kill another person, that's a rare act.
Do you think
very few people kill?
Do you think it's a result of a manifestation of the high temperature of our rhetoric over the last 10 years?
No. I mean, maybe, but again, when you study history, I mean, the whole 20th century was filled with assassinations. That the late 19th century, I mean, you had politically motivated anarchist killings, and you could say, well, were those rational? Bombings. I mean, the whole 20th century. I mean, it's a recurrence of.
I want to ask you a question about that.
But maybe I don't know. Maybe the rhetoric is up, so maybe you could say that's
those old killings. Some of them, at least, happened within the lifetimes of people who would duel, like killing in those days. As extrajudicial.
I'm talking the 20th century, though. Forget the 19th, into the mid 20th, the middle, late. Gerald Ford had 2 assassination attempts on him within 17 days.
Right. So then that's when I was a kid.
And then Reagan is shot and almost killed.
The thing is, the issues. This is what I was thinking about. The issues when I was a kid were very, very important and real. College-age kids were being sent off to Vietnam and dying.
Mm-hmm.
Black people were fighting to be treated with a minimum of dignity in the world, in the public life. Ride the bus, be able to vote, go to restaurants, be spoken to properly. So, in some way, I understand more that these issues were so intense that violence popped up.
Mm-hmm.
Today, despite the fact that we're apoplectic and going crazy about everything, we don't have big problems comparatively.
Yes, compared to the 1960s.
And so violence about these problems is bizarre. It's ginned up. It's one thing when you're fighting to not be sent off to war to die, and another thing when you're fighting for whatever people think they're fighting for today.
Mm-hmm.
So I, in some way, I do think I've made this analogy. Global warming is real, but of course, in any particular hurricane, no matter how bad it is, we really don't know
right,
what global warming is caused because we've always had bad hurricanes, right? But we do know that unless we attend to the carbon in the atmosphere, we're going to have more and more hurricanes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Nobody can know whether this guy was going to kill somebody. And by the way, sometimes it's political violence, but the people who commit political violence, they might have just killed somebody non-politically. Like, they could just be wanting someone else to kill somebody, right?
Yeah.
This is a little bit more attention-seeking. But I do feel that if we don't, as it were, lower the carbon in the atmosphere of our rhetoric, we are going to see more and more.
Well, I think we're in, I should clarify and say we're in a very volatile era politically. I think that's very true. And I don't want to dismiss that. I meant more that we have a long history in this country of these style of killings. But yes, we are currently in an era where we're very polarized. The political rhetoric is very hot. It's been that way now for a decade.
And we have algorithmic accelerants, you know.
And you have social media. Yeah. So no doubt there are ways one can be more quickly radicalized. So I think that's all true. I think it's very true. I think there's something now in the mood and the culture and the currents. And I'm curious to see if there's more of a movement away from the mass shooting to the targeted political killing. It seems like we're moving there. Mass shootings haven't ended, but there have been fewer of them, at least in the spectacular fashion of the 2010s. You look at the 2010s between Sandy Hook, between Aurora, then into 2022, the Uvalde. There was, I mean, a Parkland in 2018. There were so many. Las Vegas.
It was a social contagion.
Well, I do think there's a mimetic element to this. I do think there is something to the fact that Columbine inaugurated the era of the mass shooting of a very vulnerable population. You didn't see that as much in the 20th century. You saw the targeted killings. You saw the bombings. I mean, Oklahoma City, obviously, terrorist attacks. But the idea of just walking into a school and just shooting completely defenseless people, Columbine really begins that. And you see from Columbine to Virginia Tech, that was in 2007, and then really into the 2010s, which had this rash of really awful continuous mass shootings. I do think there's something about one alienated, mentally ill person sees this is a way forward. I think for a while there was a lot of infamy bestowed upon the early mass shooters. You look at the Columbine kids, James Holmes with Aurora, Adam Lanza for Sandy Hook, even a guy like Elliot Rodger. People sort of forget him, but he was kind of like the inaugural incel. He left behind this incel manifesto, and he shot up.
Which one was he?
He was the California one in 2014. He shot up a bunch of people. It's like at a college campus, and he went around and he left behind this very detailed manifesto hating on women. So we're sort of at the beginning of that kind of really deep, dark misogyny, and then it continues, right? And so I do think there is something about alienated young men in particular see something happening. They have no outlet for their various, real mental struggles. Guns are easy to come by in America, and you go act on it, right? And it's easier in a way than a targeted assassination. For an assassination, you do have to take a tough shot. You have to plan it out. The school shooting was simple. You walk in with a gun and you start killing people. And now you see, whether it was with Mangione, Crooks, and now the Charlie Cook shooting, we're now moving back into targeted political killings. I don't know exactly what that means. It feels like there's a shift.
The mass shootings were often suicidal in nature, whereas the assassinations don't seem like these people want to die.
Some definitely were suicidal. A lot of them were suicidal in nature. Somewhere the Parkland guy lived. James Holmes was completely deranged. He lived. There were definitely suicidal elements to it. Some were just killed by police as well. I do think I have one theory that is not proven, but I've wondered about this, is that because we've had so many mass shootings, for those who seek infamy, who seek recognition, I don't know if I'd put the Charlie Kirk killer in that category. I think if you're seeking infamy today, mass shooting is not the way to go. because there have been too many and Americans tune them out. I think that's the dark truth. We've had so many. Now, if you want infamy, it's the targeted political killing. That's how you get it.
The law of diminishing returns is kicked in on.
I mean, it's the sad truth is yes. I mean, that's the reality. They've happened so many times in such gruesome fashion, between Sandy Hook, between Aurora in a movie theater, between all these killings. I mean, Las Vegas he shot 800 something people. I mean, it's absurd. Yes, I think now if you are seeking infamy, the mass shooting, you will not get it. Especially also media outlets treat them differently now. You see that the killer is not elevated as much as they
What about the
used to
fact
be.
that Luigi got so much adulation, especially
Right.
Women,
That's the
might have motivated
targeted killing.
this guy, Tyler Robinson.
Well, that's where I'm talking about the mimetic element of this. Yes, and that's where I think there is something to the idea that trends happen. A would-be killer sees something happening and they get the idea. So yes, I think with Mangione, with Crooks and Trump, though if Crooks had gotten the kill shot, he would have been Lee Harvey Oswald territory. Instead, he's forgotten because he didn't kill Trump. So that's also the reality of all this.
So I mean, we can wrap it up soon. I'm very concerned about, as you know, I relate to it as a Jewish parent. I mean, I was always into this. I was always upset by these conspiracy theories. Always, my whole life, I was upset about the conspiracy theories about COVID, Russiagate, like you name it. Obviously, election denial. They're all bad. I mean, Russiagate is a different category because there was, so to speak, evidence. There was, so to speak, something that people could massage in their minds to be able to, if they tuned out and refused to look at any of the countervailing evidence.
Whereas here at the Netanyahu, it just seems like Charlie Kirk had a meeting with Ackman. That's all they got. Yeah. There's not much else.
But and I don't know if it will lead to violence against Jews as this spreads more and more and more. It wouldn't shock me. We've had violence at synagogues already, but if you start feeding a lot of people the notion that the Jews are behind killing our presidents, banging our children, you just stack on every single thing bad and say the Jews are behind it, killing Charlie Kirk. At some point, you are going to provoke somebody. But I'm more concerned about just the atmospherics of my Jewish kids, your Jewish kids, growing up under that cloud of we are the people that. And this is where my father grew up. Anyway, do you want to hear, before you go, Dave Smith read some of the text messages between him and Charlie Kirk shortly before he died. And they are actually interesting. And they, do I have that as number 8?
But
yeah. Go ahead.
Charlie did. And we started right away talking about like thinkers and books and this and that. And so as soon as we start talking about it, I'm already like, all right, Charlie, so you know what it is already, dude, right? Like, you know that the fucking Likud party got us into the last 7 wars. So what the fuck are we talking about here, And then he would kind of just like laugh and chuckle and like look away. And he'd go, he goes, look, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. He goes, and then he would say something like, he'd be like, look, I'm a Christian man, and it's really important to me that we preserve these holy sites and that they be under the control of Western civilization. And then I'd be like,
I said earlier that there were multiple pillars of Charlie Kirk's support for Israel. It's interesting. I didn't even notice that the holy sites. He's concerned about the holy sites being in Jewish hands, not in Muslim hands. So go ahead. This is one of his motivations.
Like, yeah, but like, couldn't we maybe find a happy medium between that and genociding all the people in the surrounding areas? But so this was a Charlie Kirk, unprompted, texted me about the Douglas Murray debate. Now, just like kind of keeping in mind, and I'll fully disclaim here, Charlie Kirk's a really nice guy. You could chalk a lot of this up to him being nice. Charlie Kirk wrote to me Sunday, April 13th at 8:01 p.m. Listen to you on Rogan. You did well, despite me being more on the pro-Israel side. Very little I disagree with what you said. One point, When Douglas was going on about you using arguments from authority, it's a ridiculous claim. You were using original source quotes to prove their motives, all capital and motives, not their analysis of geopolitics, etc. Two totally different things. You were right on that point 100%. Keep up the good work. Hope to cross paths at some point soon. And I think that's not completely insignificant. Like, I think that does at least demonstrate that this wasn't Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro was not sending me this text message.
Unfortunately.
Let's just say. Here's the other one that I thought was I just had a post about, like, you know, how wrong political violence is and how anyone who thinks you're helping the poor Palestinians by murdering some embassy workers, you're not. This is just a really interesting tweet. I haven't read this till right now. I didn't click on it. But he sent me it in our text thread. But this is Charlie Kirk, by the way, talking about this stuff. Pretty relevant to today. He said, I must push back against one thing. All over X, I see claims that some people have, quote, blood on their hands simply because they've made tweets attacking Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israel government, or the war in Gaza. No. And then he goes off on a whole thing. You can look up the tweet if you want to say it. But he's making the point that it was horrible what happened to them, but it's also messed up to, like, blame anybody who was criticizing Israel for now being responsible for them doing this. So he sent me that tweet. And I responded back as he sent me. He sent me this at noon on May 22nd, and I responded back at 12:01. I said, I was literally reading it as you texted. And I said, thank you. I really appreciate that. We need cooler heads to prevail here. It's a very dangerous situation. And he said, totally. And then he said, we should do a podcast in person and have a fun, lighthearted, contrasting conversation on Israel. I bet we actually agree on most of it.
Now, what's interesting is that I have communications with Darryl Cooper when we were kind of friendly. And I'm not going to expose them. But one of them, he tweeted publicly. It was about Israel. And I was trying to get him on my podcast. And he wrote to me, we probably disagree less than you think, which is very similar to what Charlie Kirk said to Dave Smith. And in a private conversation, when I brought up, I think I can say this, he wouldn't care, when I brought up the subject of how he used T.E. Lawrence in Fear and Loathing in New Jerusalem, where he kind of quoted him in a pro-Arab way, but left out how he dumped on the Arabs and their mentality. He acknowledged the point, and he said, yeah, if I had Fear and Loathing to do again, I would do a lot of things differently. So, you know, between people who disagree but want to engage in a friendly relationship with someone they think is formidable on the other side and worth their time, what Charlie Kirk was saying there and how he spoke to Dave Smith is familiar to me, because it's the way I would. It's nice. I mean, I like that they had that conversation. I wish that Darryl hadn't taken such a turn to the right as he had. People couldn't understand why it was that I was soft on Martyr Made at first, but if they saw our DMs, they would understand it was a very different conversation, and he was quite more open to a fact-based discussion. Anyway, so that's that. I don't know. Megyn Kelly's probably gonna be mad at me. I just, you know, this is not a paralipsis. Is that what was that the word? I can't remember the word now. Yeah, paralipsis. I'm not saying she's anti-Israel. She's clearly not. Even throughout all this, she makes the point of saying, I support Israel. They have to win. Hamas needs to be defeated. And certainly, there's no evidence of her being anti-Semitic. But what she is doing, whether she realizes it or not, is that she is undermining the firewall that there used to be between certain types of unfounded, ugly, conspiratorial thinking and the rest of and the, I don't know, how would you put it, the respectable world, the mental respectability. And that's not a bullshit distinction. It's not a bullshit distinction. It's like there are editors for the New York Times, and often they get it wrong. But we can't just pretend that Candace Owens and Ian Carroll and Alex Jones and Harrison Smith and Max Blumenthal has been right about some things. But, you know, I always say that they're kind of, there's like a chain, and they all know their place in the chain. They'll never turn on each other. Max will be a little bit more careful about his standards, but then he will cite the one below him, who will then cite the one below him, and who will then cite Dan Bilzerian, who says the Jews are the worst threat to planet Earth, and they will never say a bad word to each other. And this is a fucking dangerous world, and I don't understand. I think that Megyn Kelly's career has reached escape velocity, and that even if she were to raise the hackles, or get the ire of a large portion of her audience by blasting Candace Owens, she would still be a huge star, and she would gain some new audience. So I would ask, I don't know if she'll ever even, this is like pissing in the wind, she'll never hear it or know about it, I don't think. But if people are taking Candace out of context, she should demonstrate that. Like, put up or say, you know what, I looked into it and actually I was wrong. They're not taking her out of context. She really is engaging in this lowest form of activity, of intellectual activity, and dangerous form. So that's all I have to say about it. I had some other stuff about Charlie Kirk, but I don't want to do it. What was your general feeling about him?
About Kirk?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know him at all.
No, were you aware of him as a public figure? I was fairly aware.
I was definitely very much aware of him. To me, he's a MAGA functionary. So, I mean, I like that he had this sort of embrace of debate culture. It seemed a little phony to me in that you're going around, you debate college kids who don't really know much better. I know he had debates with non-college kids who were a little more formidable, but a lot of it was trolling 19-year-olds and then posting YouTube clips about it. But
with very provocative thumbnails.
Yeah, I mean, he's an impressive organizer. The left has no equivalent. I'll say that. He built up a machine, raised hundreds of millions of dollars. He was obviously very talented. I was not impressed by his intellect. That's just how I feel. And
he got a very high score in a math essay.
I'm sure he did. And I think he ultimately, whatever principles he held were secondary to Donald Trump, that his whole reason for operating and existing became serving MAGA. And so anyone who is so subservient to one person, I take less seriously. So I'm very sad he was killed. I think killing is awful. I think gun violence is awful. No one should die like that. But I'm not impressed by a person who spent at least their final years being a party functionary. That's what he was. As in, if this were a Soviet dictatorship, he'd be a Soviet
apparatchik.
Yes, apparatchik. So there wasn't much evidence of public independent thought. And if he ever had independent thoughts, like an Epstein or the Iran strike, he quickly fell in line. Mm-hmm. That's what he did. So I don't view him in the vein of like a William F.
I don't think he fell in line at Epstein, by the way.
But he wasn't going to criticize Donald Trump.
Are you an Epstein believer?
I don't care very much, I'll be honest. I mean, I'm sure Epstein is a very bad person, and obviously his tentacles extended to Democrats and Republicans alike.
You don't need to use the word tentacles, given its association historically with anti-Semitism.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're making like a tentacle porn.
Yeah, I thought you were.
No, I'm saying tentacles is like the word tentacle.
Hentai.
It's like when you reacted to Zelensky being characterized as rattling.
I don't know if
there's certain words.
Candace Owens called a Jew that commented a rodent the other day on. I mean, she doesn't give a shit.
No.
Yeah.
But no, I'm sure it's a bipartisan scandal, involves elite Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah, I actually don't. I'm in the Michael Tracy school.
I've enjoyed Tracy's writing on it as well. I'll say that.
I think there's almost nothing there except that
there's probably not a smoking
but he's a horrible criminal.
He's a terrible
children.
Person. Yeah.
Or not. The
predator. He's a predator, but the smoking gun, I don't think really.
I don't think Bill Clinton was involved in any kind of sexual crimes with Jeffrey.
He hung out. I think they all hung out with a popular seeming rich person. They liked to go to the parties and and look the other way. I'm sure they all knew, but they looked the other way. Which is its own.
Well, I don't even know if looking the other way when somebody's having sex with children. I don't know about that.
But Trump was on record making some comment about he likes them young. I mean, listen, it's weird because it wasn't that long ago in my lifetime when grown men would have a 17-year-old girl on their arm. You know, it was done. So,
but we're not talking 17 in the case of Jeffrey Epstein.
No, we're talking. Well, a lot of them we're talking about 16, 15. You know, where do you draw the line? I don't know, but yes, I think they did look the other way, and he did clearly belonged in jail, and he clearly pled it down to a lesser charge. So he probably did what he did. Actually, it was worse than what he did time for. But that's all clearly true to me. But the notion of a vast conspiracy,
and that he committed suicide. You believe he committed suicide? As do I.
Yes, I believe he committed suicide. Yeah. All right. Well,
he certainly had every reason to commit suicide.
I have to figure out how to do these podcasts because obviously there were too many videos. Although every one of them is important. you know, like I talk.
Well, then why do you think there's too many if they were all important?
Because I feel maybe
you could shorten the.
Burden them. It's right. It's hard. I don't want to shorten them because I don't want to be accused of taking them out of context. I think part of what is convincing about them and inculpating is that they go on and on and on. It's like, oh, he clearly didn't take 10 or 15 seconds. Like, this is a long rant that she's doing about the Jews. And here's another one. And by the way, there's more. It's like, you know, anybody can get into it. There's more and more and more. And this guy, Harrison Smith.
But she goes on and on about Leo Frank, you know.
Yeah, well, that's just her way of, you know, talking about the Jews, but pretending she's not talking about the Jews. Let's end with the last one, Harrison Smith. It's a short one. This is the guy, number 3. This is Max Blumenthal's source.
I've had two people reach out to me that are in positions to know, that are very highly connected, from 2 different branches of government at the highest levels, to tell me it was Israel. Now, you know, again, I don't know if that's true. I'm just saying I've had 2 people reach out to me on their own, say, hey, I can't really get into it, but yeah, they think it was Israel. Everybody here thinks it was Israel.
So this is a load.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, this guy is a load bearing.
Who's this dude?
That's the guy who Max Blumenthal base is reporting on, who Candace Owens then base is reporting on. You know, they're all, as my go-to phrase, has been load bearing now. Like load bearing in the sense that if you knock that one out like a Jenga tower, everything falls. He's one of that. And these people they all say, I spoke to people, I have sources. Since when is that okay? And by the way, even the people on the Megyn Kelly show, I think Megyn herself, like a lot of people are calling me anti-Semitic. Who? We live in the friggin' age of text messages and emails. Post it while you're protecting the people that you're angry at, right? I don't know. All right.
Ross Barkan, Glass Houses.
Century.
What's the name of the book?
Century.
Glass Century.
I like Ross Barkan so much that for his sake, I hope Mom Donnie wins. Because I know he loves him.
He's going to win. That's it.
If it's 1-on-1, Mom Donnie versus Cuomo, what are the odds?
I think Zoran would still win.
But what would you?
Oh, I'd give it like 70-30 to Zoran 1-on-1.
Yeah, and
65-35.
At that point, anything can happen because there'll be a debate and
yeah, but Cuomo's weak. That's the problem.
He was terrible in those debates.
He's weak because he's not a good politician.
Arrogant,
lazy.
Yeah,
entitled.
Yeah. All right. Thank God he's not Jewish. All right. Good night, everybody.
All right.
Was that a bore for you?
No, I learned a lot.
You got to do a read.
Seen all those clips.
Yeah, you should.